Wanted to just put this out there. If you'll see in the chat feature, I just put our youth department vision. And I want student pastors to see this, to understand this is why we're doing this tonight. Our vision is to equip and to empower students and student pastors by pursuing excellence in two things. We want to pursue excellence in organizing spiritually challenging events and providing useful apostolic resources. That we want to do two things: put on good events and provide good resources so that students can be equipped and empowered, but not just students, also student pastors. And so our department is here to serve you. And that's why we want to put a great emphasis on things like these calls tonight. And that's why we want to put a great emphasis on events that we host for student pastors, because we want to do all that we can to help you. Because the individuals that are on this call, for real, you guys are the real MVPs. And I understand that now is not the easiest time to be student pastoring. It never is easy. But right now, in the midst of everything that we're facing, student pastoring is certainly not easy. And the enemy is doing everything it can to take advantage of a weird season like this to cause us to question our calling, cause us to question our direction, cause us to question what we're doing, if we're succeeding. And that's where we as the body of Christ, and that's where we as leaders, and that's where we as student pastors, we've got to rise up in this last day. And we've got to rise up in this hour and lean even more on the Word of God, on the Spirit of God, on the solid rock that we depend on. And so, if anything, I pray that tonight you're encouraged to keep fighting. I pray that tonight we're encouraged to keep pushing and to keep the faith, because what you are doing is certainly making a difference. Without student pastors, I couldn't imagine what our youth groups would look like, and I couldn't imagine what our students would be facing right now. And so, for real, I'm encouraged. I'm thankful for all of the student pastors that are keeping the faith, that are continuing to fight on, that are continuing to put one step in front of the other, putting full faith in the fact that God is making a way for our students and our student pastors across the district. So I'm excited for tonight. We're going to have Brother Austin Sizemore take it away, and then we're going to follow this up with a good portion of questions and answers, a good time of Q&A. And so please feel free to ask questions and allow this to be an iron sharpeneth iron call tonight. And so with that, Brother Austin Sizemore, thankful for all that you do. The floor is yours, good sir. Take it away.
Thank you, Brother Ryan Peterson. I'm just so honored to be here with you guys here tonight. And I want to give a shout out to our Indiana Youth Committee and our president and secretary, Brother Peterson and Brother Gilliland, for the opportunity to speak with you guys here tonight. We have incredible leadership in our district, and it's awesome. Things are happening despite a difficult time. Things are happening. Lives are being changed, and we've got big plans for this year. So excited to kick this year off with some awesome things. But I wanted to also say thank you to all of you for being on here tonight. Student pastoring, youth worker, being on a youth team is often a thankless job. And there's a lot of times where you probably don't get the appreciation that you deserve, but you're on here on a Monday night at 8 o'clock and you're trying to get better and you're trying to grow. And every little thing that you do to help grow yourself and grow your youth group and grow your students and be a better leader, it makes such a difference. And I want to say thank you for that. I want to say thank you for every prayer that you've prayed. I want to say thank you for everything that you've done in private, all the things that you have done to better yourself and become a better leader for your students and for your young people that are following you and that you're helping out with. And that matters so much. And above everything else, God notices. And even if you never get the recognition from them or from other people or appreciation from other people, God notices everything that you've done. And God notices that you're on here tonight dedicating some time, hopefully to get better if I have anything good to say at all. But if not, then you just heard another person's perspective on youth ministry. And maybe that'll be something that you can glean from, hopefully. But I wanted to just take a few moments here. And as Brother Peterson said, I really, expect, I didn't want to get into the practicality of kind of how we run our youth group and things like that during this talk. I wanted to kind of talk about the heart of being a youth pastor or a student pastor or a youth worker. I wanted to talk about that for a few minutes. And then if you have any questions or anything like that, I really expect the Q&A to cover a lot of ground as far as practical questions and other things like that. And I've told the team as well, I'm more than willing. I'll put my number in the chat. I'll put my email in the chat. I'm more than willing to take some time out after this call, but we just have a few minutes here. So I'm going to kind of high level talk about some things for a few moments, and then we'll get to some questions and some answers. But Indiana, blessed with just an incredible leadership, and our pastor, Bishop Mitchell, and now our pastor, Matt Johnson, is just awesome. And I'm very thankful to be in the position that I'm in. But eons ago, it seems, it's probably not that long ago, but it feels long ago, that I was investing in this young man when I became youth pastor of our church. And I was really reaching out for this young man. We had a lot of things in common. He played football. I played football. We had common interest. We got along very well. But this young man was just absolutely, undeniably running from his calling and running from the will of God in his life. And I was doing everything I could to reach out to him. We connected as far as a relationship goes, but as far as taking things deeper into, living a more godly life and following the call that God has put on him, he was clearly running from it. He was getting into situations that he should not be, hanging around with people that he should not be, doing things he should not be doing. And he knows that and was aware of that. And it was so difficult for me. And I was reaching out for him, praying for him. I was texting him. I was consumed by this young person. I literally would leave a youth service and we'd have amazing things happen. We'd have people get filled with the Holy Ghost, and we'd have new people come, and we'd have all these guests come, and just incredible moves of God and awesome things happening in our youth group during these services. And then I would go home and I would lie restless in my bed thinking about this dude, because he didn't come again. He didn't come. I told him like 85 million times. I don't know how many texts I can send without getting a response, but it looks like a, blue all the way on your phone as you're reading through the messages. And I just had reached out for him so much, and I was so hurt, and I took it personally, and I started to really just doubt myself and really doubt if I was being a successful youth pastor. And I was really doubting whether or not I could do this, and whether or not if I couldn't impact this dude, I don't know who I could impact. And long story short, after years of this guy living away from God and just getting into some things situations that were not good for his calling. And he was in a college one day, and he hit his knees and he prayed, and he found God again. He came back to God. He immediately got out of the situations that he was in. This young man is now at our church. He's a young adult at our church. I just asked him this past year to be in charge of our high school students and our high school males. He's literally almost co-pastoring this youth with me. And this guy is incredible. I can't say it enough how awesome this young man and the transformation that has happened. And he came back after he moved back to Columbus, and he told me about a time when after a service, I reached out for him, and I saw him come in because I believe his parents made him come. And then I saw him come in, and I saw him walk out the back during the second or third song, and I'm getting ready to preach. And instead of just letting him go, I just ran to the door, and I knew where he was headed, and I knew that he shouldn't be going where he was going. And I caught him, and I knew there was no way that I could stop him, but I looked him in the eyes, and I told him that I loved him. And I told him that God has a plan for his life and that God has a calling on his life. And I asked him if he was leaving, and he said yes. And I knew that there was no way I could get him to stay, but I said, okay. And I gave him a hug, and I walked back in there, and I preached to a crowd that did not have him in it. And to me, that was an unsuccessful moment. And then looking back on that now, he says that that was a changing point, a pinnacle point in his life where he started to really feel God calling him and searching for him. And he started to really feel the love and relentless love of God in his life. And it was manifested through me. And I just wanted to encourage some people that are trying so hard and it seems like you are unsuccessful. You are not successful when that person comes back. We often view success as something where we wait to get recognized, or we wait until, this person has this heroic story of coming back to God, or we often tried to see things like it was a good investment once he just finally made up his mind to come to God and to change his life. But the truth of the matter is, I was successful in my ministry by reaching out to him. And even though it felt very unsuccessful, that was the most successful I was in my walk with God and my relationship with this young man in my ministry as a student and youth pastor. So don't wait until the glory moments. Don't wait until you get the recognition that, hey, that really impacted me. Don't wait for that to feel like you are having successful walk and successful ministry as a student pastor, as a youth worker, and a youth pastor. I really feel impressed to say that tonight, because I really feel like all of us struggle sometimes because we pour out so much, and there's oftentimes we don't see the dividends of what happens until years later or months later. We don't always see the dividends of that sermon that you gave so much effort into preparing for those people. You don't always see the dividends until way beyond, and sometimes you never see the dividends. But the truth is, in youth ministry and in ministry in general, you're doing it all unto God. You're doing this for God's glory, and not your success is not determined by other people's free will. God did not choose to change people's hearts. He could have changed everyone, but he chose that all of us can serve with such passion and with such love that success is not defined by what other people do and by what your students do and by what your youth do and how they're doing. That is not success. Success is when you serve people. Success is when you love people. Success is when you care for them. And if they accept it and they receive it, that's awesome. But you're doing it for God and you're doing it for them. I also wanted just to share a couple things about the things that I've learned in my short time. And I'm not any sort of, savant. I'm not any sort of expert on youth ministry, but I have learned a few things. And I just want to encourage you guys here tonight with a few words. Most importantly, the most successful you will be as a youth pastor, as a youth worker, and a student pastor is when you love your students, and when you love your young people, and when you love those people that God has entrusted into your hands. Above everything else, love them. If you hear nothing else that I said tonight, if you want to be a good leader, you must love them. And if you have loved them in the past and some of that love has died down, I encourage you and I ask you, and I'm going to be frank with you, please stop leading them. Because people who lead without love get into a very dangerous place, because that's when arrogancy and pride and when ministry becomes about us instead of them. Please love your students, love your young people. It's not going to be easy. They're going to break things. They're going to come into your house and they're going to ruin your carpet and it's going to be destroyed, and you're going to try and sell your house, and you're like, I can't because this carpet has stains on it from 4 years ago when they decided to chug 2 liters on my nice carpet that I just got cleaned. I'm not bitter or anything, but I tell you, it's not going to be easy. There's many times, even, I can think of some stories of some young people that I've given advice to, and they've just completely ignored the advice that I had given them. And then years later, they come back and their life is just messed up. I told them not to date that girl. I told them that they shouldn't date that boy. And yet they still went and did it. And all this terrible things happen. And then they have the audacity to blame it on you, to say that you weren't there for them enough, that you didn't reach out to them enough, even though they didn't listen to the advice that you gave. It's going to be difficult to love them. It's going to be hard to love them. But I beg you, I plead you, love them. Loving them is the only way to make an impact on their life. Loving them is the only way to make true change. Loving them is the only way that you should lead from a ministerial perspective. You should only lead from a place of love. You always love them, and love them, because if you don't love them with a godly passion, with a fervor and an anointing from God, if you don't love them, they will seek out love somewhere else. They will seek acceptance. They will seek affirmation. They will seek admiration from somebody else or something else. And if you can't love them, then you're doing a disservice to them by leading them. And so loving them requires building relationships with them and leading them. Loving them requires doing both, being a friend, but being a mentor, being close enough to them where you can relate with them and hang out with them and spend time with them, but also far enough ahead of them that you can motivate them and you can challenge them and you can call them when maybe something isn't looking right in their life. You can't just be their friend, and you also can't just be a leader that comes in and tells them where they're wrong and challenges them all the time. It's so important. We must be close enough to relate, yet far enough ahead in our relationship with them to motivate them and inspire them to change. Because in John chapter 6, I was thinking about this. John chapter 6, Jesus just performed the miracle of feeding the 5,000. And Jesus has all of these disciples, and these people that were on that day, they had heard amazing teaching by God. They had seen miracles by God. They had seen all this stuff, and there was tons of people there, 5,000 at least people there. Then Jesus starts to challenge them a little bit. He starts to get up in their grill a little bit and starts to really question why they're there and question their authenticity. And he starts to call them out maybe a little bit on their stuff. And in John chapter 6, it says many, in fact, all of them deserted him and left him. And then Jesus looks at the 12. He looks at his disciples. He looks at his core group and he says, will you leave me as well? And they say, no, of course, we're not going to leave you. We would never do that. Why? It's because Jesus had a relationship with them. He wasn't to everyone else, he didn't have that personal relationship with. So when he challenged them and when he got in their grill a little bit and when he started to really, come at it from a leadership standpoint and motivate them and try and get them to change without the relationship piece, they didn't want to hear it. They wanted to see the miracles. They wanted to see all the awesome stuff, but they didn't want to hear correction. They didn't want to hear those things that would help them get better, but were kind of tough to swallow. And as a youth pastor, you're going to have discernment and a balance between I'm going to get close with them, because a relationship is influence. If you want to gain influence over your people, spend time with them. Go hang out with them. Go out to eat with them. Do stuff with them. Build a relationship with them, and you will have influence over them. But also, there needs to be a tension in your relationship that you're not just their friend. You're not accepting of all of their behavior. You're trying to get them to change. You're trying to get them to live a more godly lifestyle. And so have the relationship, but also motivate, and you will lead like Jesus did. And I beg you, impacting a life takes a long time. Impacting a life takes a very long time. Trust the process. Trust the process. Believe in yourself, believe in your calling, believe in what God has called you to do. And every time that you reach out, and every time that you pray, and every time you go chase that kid who's leaving a youth service and you tell him that you love him, even though he's leaving, all of those little things that may not seem successful in the moment will be successful in the end. You will be successful in your servanthood. You will be successful in your love. You will be successful as a youth worker and a student pastor and as a youth pastor when you do those things. So I beg you, don't give up. Don't give up. You never know what's going to happen. You never know when you have a life. I've had some young people have came up to me and said that I've said things. I don't know if I've said them, but they said it changed their life. So I'm going to accept it. There's been so many things with little conversations and every little hangout that you spend, and every time that you find something that, oh, we have a common interest. Let's go do that together. Let's go fishing together. Let's go rock climbing together. I don't care. We'll do something together. I need to build a relationship with you. I need to let you know that I love you and I care about you, but I'm also not going to let you stay where you're at. I'm going to motivate you and pull you out of the situation you are in into being a better Christian and a better man. And so if you love them, you will serve them. You will serve them. You will serve them. You are not defined by anything. If you're a youth pastor on here, if you're a student pastor on here, if you're a youth worker on here, you are not defined by your role. You are not defined by what title is outside of your office. And I know we're all laughing because we don't have offices, but you're not defined by that. You are defined by your servanthood, by your love for these young people, by your care. When Jesus says, well done, thy good and faithful servant, he's not going to, it doesn't matter what role or position that you have, if you're a youth pastor or if you're just on the youth team or if you're just somebody who wants to help young people out. If you love them, if you build a relationship with them, you can lead them and change their life. And so I beg you, just understand, trust the process of things, and who knows what will happen. And I will tell you the truth. There are other people out there that I have given myself to, and I have not seen the dividends like I've seen with that story of that young man who is now helping me out on the youth team. There's other people out there that I have poured out to and poured into and just gave them my all to, and they're still out there. And the success story isn't quite finished yet. And I don't know if it ever will be, but I'm not going to let their free will, let their decision define whether or not I'm a successful youth pastor. I'm a successful youth pastor when I humble myself and serve. When I'm a successful youth pastor when I love. I'm a successful youth pastor when I pray for them in secret and in private. I'm a successful youth pastor when I give of myself and give of my time to love them and to care for them and to teach Bible studies and to do all of those amazing things. And every moment that I pray for them and love them and serve them and give of myself, that's when I'm a successful youth pastor. Not whether or not they turn out to be the next amazing preacher, not when they turn out to be the next pastor, not when they turn out to be this amazing person of God. It's when you give of yourself. That is when you are successful. So allow yourself to view yourself that way and continue to be motivated to continue to love them, to give of yourself, even if it's not looking great. Continue to trust the process, and God will honor that, and God will honor you, because we're doing this unto God. There's people involved, and you need to love those people, but everything that we are doing is unto God. And if that's the case, God will honor that and love that, and love you for that. So without further ado, if we've got any questions, if you've got anything, you want to know anything about how we operate down here in Columbus, or you have any questions whatsoever, we're going to, put those in the chat, and Brother Gilliland is kind of going to make sure that we're on track with everything here. So we can move to the question point, but I just encourage you at the conclusion of that thought trust the process, trust the process, trust the process, and good things will happen, and God will honor that.
Awesome word, Brother Sizemore. Thank you so much for the encouragement. And my goodness, I hope that you guys had some pens and paper out, because there's some great stuff. Go ahead, like he said, if you have any questions, and this can be as it can be related to what he talked about, or it can just be something totally off that. As long as it's related to youth ministry, go ahead and drop those questions in here. We got one coming in from Lucas Ruddick there in Bloomington. He says, what are the 3 most impactful books that have helped you as a youth pastor?
Yeah, that's awesome. I would say as far as book recommendations go, man, Undercover by John Bevere has helped me immensely. It's kind of a spiritual authority book that has helped me a ton. And as well as A Tale of Three Kings by Gene Edwards has been an incredible read. And really, as a youth pastor, a lot of your time is being spent following your pastor's vision, but also kind of leading your own vision in your own ministry. So you're somewhere in the middle a lot. And those books have really helped me through that. And then one that I always recommend to students that are, just hungry for God and they're in their first steps is a book called Not a Fan by Kyle Ildeman. And it's a fun read. He's a good writer that it has a lot of jokes and a lot of humor, but also it gets really down to the point of what it means to be a true follower of Jesus.
Awesome. We have any other questions in case you didn't get those books? It was Undercover. I think, correct me if I was wrong here, but Undercover by John Bevere, Tale of Three Kings by Gene Edwards, and Not a Fan by Kyle Idleman. All 3 would be great books to pick up. All right. Another question coming in here from Casey from Elkhart. He says, anyone else have youth who are scared to go to youth congress because of COVID? Okay, I don't know if we'll direct this question to you, Sizemore, if you have anything. But
sure, I would say with that kind of braids up. I'm going to go a different route with it, but
yeah, that's good. Next question's there too about COVID.
So in response to the first one, you've got differing opinions on everything. COVID has just brought that to light in ways we haven't seen before. But some parents think some things are accepted. Some parents think other things are accepted. It's hard in this position, but I will tell you this: you're not gonna appease everybody ever. You're never gonna fully satisfy every single parent. But if you can get your parents and you can get your students to really believe that you have their absolute best interest in mind, then that's always going to work out in the end. And if they know that they can trust you and they can love you, and yes, there's problem parents, and yes, I have horror stories as well. But if you can get them to believe that you're a godly person who prays and cares, but also is wise, and they have the best interest of them in mind, and you can explain and you're not unavailable to talk about their issues, then things are going to work out if you can do that.
I think that's great. I'll take one or two more questions here, and then looks like we have a couple coming in. This next one, if you could just build a little bit more on COVID and just the impact that it's had on all of our youth groups. I'm sure all of us have seen over this past year, some sort of decrease in attendance, whether it's just to individual events or if it's just overall with your youth group. You have Travis saying his youth group went from 35 to 40 kids down to to 3 to 5, and just how can we restart, and even just building relationships with with your youth as well. So how would you suggest with Sizemore kind of getting the momentum back started? And I know this is different for each of us. Our churches are all in different places, but what's a way that you can kind of ramp up that momentum again if it seems stalled?
Yeah, that's I would say personally, we've had the same struggles. I think every youth group has seen the same struggles this past year. It was crazy. There's a big difference between the numbers we had before and the numbers we had coming back from quarantine and from COVID. I will say this: God really has been working on me personally, that I've felt such a security with our youth group because they were showing up and they were here. And what COVID did and quarantine did is it showed me that there was a lot of people in my youth group that were coming to church, but did not have a relationship with God. And there was so much of that. And I know people need connection, and that's absolutely true. And that's a major factor in all of this. And people need to be with one another. The body can help one another, and they can sharpen each other and help each other out. But there was, I wanted to, when this happened, I had to change. We had to change so much as a youth staff and as a youth team to really say, have an emphasis and a focus on, is what we're doing making them have an independent and spiritually mature relationship with God? Or are we having events and having services and having fellowships that really just cause them to be more dependent on us, and really just cause them and their relationship with God to be totally dependent on the youth pastor and the worship team and the pastor and the message for them to feel a move of God? And so what do we need to do as a team to make sure that if tragedy strikes again and these people are on their own, that we're creating people who can stand by themselves and still live for God and still have a relationship with God and still know God? And so that is what we have found. As far as ramping things back up, it's just going to require, nothing but energy, time, relationships, reaching out to people in any way you can. I would say get people who are passionate about this and get them on your team and have your team help you. It's going to take a village to reach some of the people that were lost during this time. But as far as a big picture goes, I had to reevaluate everything that we did and really look at it through the lens of, is this creating a disciple of Jesus who would be fine if I wasn't in their life and if we didn't have service? And if that wasn't it, then we had to scratch that event and get over it. And we had to do things that only created disciples of Jesus, not people who were totally dependent on me or on the youth staff or on their friends to have a relationship with God.
All right, we're going to end it with this last question here from Logan White. He says that you spoke about connecting with disconnected students with whom you related to in terms of personality. Can you speak on maybe some ways that you can relate to people, or maybe some tactics that you've had for those students who you didn't necessarily relate to personality-wise, and how can you still reach out to them?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I would say, some people were into things that I were not into. Some people are into anime, and I have never seen any sort of, Dragon Ball Z or anything like that ever in my life. And we have kids that are into all these YouTubers that are reviewing toys and games, and I could care less about it. But the truth is, I would say surround yourself with a team that isn't just a bunch of the same people. And by the same people, I mean, surround yourself with people who are different than you. Surround yourself. I'm a very disorganized person. I have to have an organized person on my team. We clash like crazy but it helps the betterment and us become more well-rounded to be able to reach those people. And at the end of the day, if you try your hardest, you'll find something that you have an interest in. You'll find a common interest or way of just talking and connecting with somebody. But above everything else, I would say your relationship with, like, the commonality that we have as people who go to church is that we should be, and it sometimes is, and I understand we're in youth ministry, but that we love God. And that commonality between us is the biggest thing, that's the biggest common interest. That's the biggest shared interest that we could ever have. It's not whether or not they played the same sport as me or they played or into the same things as me. And so I'm going to build upon that above everything else. But it is difficult at times when, you know, some people you don't really relate to as well. And matter of fact, I'll say this real briefly. I said, love everybody. I know that that's difficult. I've had some people that I've had a very difficult time loving. And I have to make sure that somebody is reaching out to that student and that somebody is reaching out to that kid. If I can't do it, if I can't be that person's mentor or youth pastor, or I can't gain the influence that I could with somebody else, I need to be sure that somebody else in my youth group, somebody else in our church, somebody else not even at our church, at another church, or somebody is reaching out to this person and making sure that their soul is safe and that they're a mentor and a good example for their life.
That's great. So I said that was going to be our last question, and if anybody in here needs to head out, you can do so. We did have one more question that came in, and I just want to reiterate something that Brother Sizemore said earlier, which is that he's available. In fact, any of us, are available if you want to reach out to us, and you have more questions. That's kind of why we're getting the Slack up and going as well, so that we can communicate. But Brother Sizemore, if you can, before we before I ask you this last question, if you want to just put your info in there. I know you said you were cool with sharing that. That way people can reach out to you if they want to.
There we go.
All right. So anybody, feel free. You can still ask questions or bounce some ideas off with Sizemore. But yeah, we got this one last question. It came in from Brother Fisher. And he said, if you can just give us some insight on your time playing organized sports. He said, I've grown up playing organized sports as well. I know if the youth position their self right, that sports could be a tremendous vehicle to share Christ. And coming from that world, what's your take on really influencing today's teens through athletics?
Yeah, I've been very fortunate in my life. I played football in high school, and I was fortunate enough to go to a university in Indianapolis, Marion University, and play college football there. I tell some students all the time, and I know that this is it's a difficult subject, because I actually do have some bitterness towards sports in a way, because so many of our young people have got this idea in their head that it's totally fine to miss out on service and totally fine to miss out on events because of sports and because of practice and other things like that. And I try and tell them all the time, I had to suffer through so much embarrassment. I went to college and I told my coaches that if I couldn't get out at 6 o'clock so I could drive an hour to come to midweek, then I couldn't play on the team and I had to forfeit my scholarship. And I was very fortunate that the coaches were cool. They allowed me to do it. They never allowed me to not know that they allowed me to do it, but they allowed me to do it. And I suffered through embarrassment of, getting out of church at 2 p.m. and driving up to practice and walking in a suit and tie to our film session on Sunday. And I share that with our young people to know it's totally possible for you to live a godly life, for you to never miss a service, for you to be at every prayer meeting, for you to to not compromise with the world standards and still be heavily involved in things. But the minute that steps across the line of the priorities now start to shift to, okay, I'm going to go to this before I go to that, that's when you have a problem. But when done right, it is an incredible vehicle. This is so crazy that you asked that question. I'll share this with you. I was going through some of my notes in my phone. I keep my notes from forever. I had a note in there from 2015 about people on the football team that I wanted to reach when I was in college. And 2 weeks ago, just a few weeks ago, some people, one of those guys stepped foot into our church and showed up. And now he's been coming to our church, and we have a relationship from going way back. We were football. He was a linebacker as well as I was. We spent so much time with one another, and it was an incredible vehicle for ministry. It was an incredible opportunity to witness to people. It was incredible from the lessons that were learned from it. But I'm still seeing the dividends of being out there and having that opportunity to get exposure to other people through that. And that man, he actually just asked me, he didn't come 2 weeks ago. Sorry. He came 2 months ago, I should say. And 2 weeks ago, he just asked me to officiate his wedding. And he and his fiance are coming to our church. They're doing incredible. God's really using them in a mighty way, and things are really looking up. But I'm telling you, if we can get our people to hold the priority of God and church and the standard of Jesus at the highest level, but all those other activities, if they don't interfere with that, they can be such an amazing vehicle to share Christ, and they can be an amazing opportunity to just witness to other people and show love to other people. And I really do believe that. I've seen it firsthand, but it is going to take some discipline. It is going to take you have to put your foot down, but it's not impossible, especially for our young people and for our young ladies and young men as well.
Incredible.
Bowman on here saying second best school in the Crossroads League. We got another collegiate athlete. He went to one of our rival universities. It's no big deal. I mean, we won every time we played your school, but it's all right, buddy.
In football.
Well, Brother Sizemore, thank you so much for the encouraging word. And I believe that the 35 people that joined tonight are leaving encouraged, knowing that we can trust the process, knowing that maybe we don't see fruit right now. Maybe we don't see it on this earth, but that we're being effective and that we are succeeding. We're doing a good job, and we just got to trust the process. And I just want to say this in closing. I was kind of complaining. We had Brother Soto as our HYC minister for our online HYC. And I was just kind of complaining to him about how difficult all of this was. And we had a couple of questions on COVID. And I think there was a couple of guys that are on the call right now that were around when we were talking about this. And Soto just kind of looked over and he said, it's in these times where we've got to look for the opportunity in the problems. And it's a shift in mindset. And so I want to encourage every single person on this call and just second what Brother Sizemore has said in let's look for the opportunity. Let's trust the process. Let's continue to lean on God. God has never failed us. He's not going to fail us in 2021. He is not going to leave us high and dry. He is not going to forsake us. And so let's trust the process. And I'm speaking to myself on this. Let there be a shift in mindset that this year we find the opportunity in every problem, that we find a way, we find the solution, that there's problems, but we're going to find the opportunity and we're going to find the solutions. And so thank you so much for speaking to us, Brother Sizemore, and thank you for telling us. I love the fact that you're just telling us, just love young people. Just love, we got to have a love for young people. And so thank you for that encouraging word. Thank you, everybody, for joining tonight. It is 8:52. We've gone a little over time. If you want to stick around and unmute yourself and hang out for a second, hang out at the altar here, feel free to do so. But if you need to take off, God bless you. Let's connect in our Slack channel. Love you guys. Thankful for what you're doing for the kingdom of God, and thankful for what you're doing in the Indiana district. So God bless you. And thank you, Sizemore. I'll stop the recording, and maybe that'll allow some people to chime in here.